Today we're going to take a look at polynomial long division, and we're going to look at it two different ways. So a reminder, back in elementary school when you learned long division, you said, does 3 go into 2? No, 3 goes into 20 6 times. And then you multiplied 6 times 3 is 18. So 20, and then you subtracted these, minus 18 is 2. You brought down the 3. 3 goes into 23 7 times. 7 times 3 is 21. Subtract again, 23 minus 21 is 2. Bring down the 4. 3 goes into 24 8 times. So your answer would be 678. I'm also going to remind you of multiplying with the boxes. So if we were to multiply this, x minus 2, and then we would have 2x squared, 5x, and 1, and then we multiplied 2x squared times x, 2x cubed, x times 5x, 5x squared, x times, oops, I usually put pluses, as times 1 is just x, 2x squared times negative 2 is negative 4x squared, negative 2 times 5x is negative 10x, and negative 2 times 1 is negative 2, and then we combine like terms. So we had just 2x cubed, but then if we combine these, 5x minus 4x squared is just x squared. Negative 10 plus x is plus 9x minus 2. And you would have gotten the same thing if we would have FOILed this as well. So 2x cubed minus 4x squared plus 5x squared minus 10x minus 2, you end up with the same thing here. Oops, and I forgot the plus x. Sorry about that. You end up with the same thing. Oops, this should be minus 9x, my bad. But we're going to focus on that box method today. So if we were to divide this using long division, the first thing we would rewrite is rewrite it like long division. And we'd have 5x cubed. And then since we don't have any 0x squareds, we add on 0x squareds plus 0x minus 8, because we need to have from the highest power going down to the lowest power. And then on the outside, we will divide x squared plus 3x minus 1. And now, much like long division, we focus just on this part. X squared, how do we make that, how many times does it go into 5x cubed? And I think the reverse. X squared times what gives you 5x cubed? Well, that's 5x squared, 5x. So now we multiply it out. So 5x times x squared is 5x cubed. 5x times 3x is 15x. And then 5x times negative 1 is negative 5x. And then what happens is we subtract all of these. So 5x cubed minus 5x cubed, well, that's 0. And then we have to do 0 minus 15x squared. Oops, that was a squared, my bad. Is negative 15x squared. And then once again, we do 0 minus negative 5 is plus 5x. And just like long division, where now we went 3 into 23, we think the same thing. X squared goes into negative 15x squared, or x squared times what gives you negative 15x squared? Well, that's negative 15. And now we multiply it out. Negative 15 times x squared is negative 15x squared. Negative 15 times 3 is negative 45x. And negative 15 times negative 1 is positive 15. And then all we do once again is we subtract. So negative 15 minus negative, well, that's plus, so that's 0. 5 minus negative 45 plus, so that turns out to be 50x. And then we still have this 8, so negative 8 minus 15 is negative 23. And since x squared can't go into this, this is our remainder. So we have 5x minus 15, and then usually we write our remainder as 50x minus 23 over x squared plus 3x minus 1. Now there's another way that you can look at this, and this is using those boxes. So basically, we're given the inside of our box, so this is the amount on the inside, and we need to find what's on the outside. So in our box here, we know we're dividing by x squared plus 3x minus 1. And our goal is to figure out this other factor on the outside. And I usually just write one column at a time here. So we know that this goes on the inside. So we know that there is a 5x cubed on the inside. Well, now we have to figure out the outside. Well, x squared times what gives you 5x cubed? Well, that's 5x. And now we multiply it out. So 5x times x squared gives us that. 5x times 3x is 15x. 5x times negative 1 is negative 5x. And now we draw our next part here. Well, we know, excuse me, this should have been a squared, my bad. 5x times 3x is 15x squared. We know on our inside here, we don't have any x squareds. And just like on here, how our diagonals were the cube term, the squared term, and x term, same thing here. So if this is 15x squared, this would have to be negative 15x squared because we have a total of 0 in here. So now we can figure it out. X squared times what gives you negative 15x? Well, that would be minus 15. And now we multiply it out. Negative 15 times 3x is negative 45x. Negative 15 times negative 1 is positive 15. And then since it's our number here, the next column is going to be our remainder. So when we look here, do we have any x's here? No, we don't. We can't have any. So now we have negative 50 here. So to make 0, this has to be a positive 50. And then our number, we need negative 8, and if this is 15, this would have to be negative 23. And so again, we have 5x minus 15, and just like here, we have a remainder of 50x minus 23 over what we're dividing by, so x squared plus 3x minus 1. So we're going to take a look at a couple of these. The next one we're going to look at, we actually need to change this. Whoops. This should be x cubed right here. So if we were to do long division, one thing I notice is it's set up because it has our highest power all the way down to our lowest. So minus 2x squared plus 10x minus 9 divided by x squared minus 1. So now let's see, x squared times what gives you 4x cubed? Well, that would be 4x. And now we multiply it out. So 4x times x squared is 4x cubed. Well, 4x times negative 1 is negative 4x. So we have to line it up over here. Subtract, well, that's 0. Negative 2 minus 0 is negative 2x squared. And remember, it's minus. So 10 minus negative 4 is 14x. And then we could bring down the negative 9. So now x squared times what gives us negative 2x squared? Well, that's negative 2. Multiply this out. Negative 2 times x squared is negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times negative 1 is 2. And now we subtract. Well, that's going to be 0, so minus 0, so that's 14x. And then negative 9 minus 2 is negative 11. And again, this is our remainder. We ended up with a number there. So our answer would be 4x minus 2 plus our remainder of 14x minus 11 over x squared minus 1. So we're going to look at this with the box as well. So change this to a 3. So what we're dividing by here is x squared, and we're going to add in plus 0x and plus, oops, that's minus 1, excuse me. So you have to have another row here. And now let's see, what do we know? This top part we know goes on the inside of our box. So we have 4x cubed on the inside to start with. And so we know that this needs to just be 4x. Well, 4x times x squared is 4x cubed. 4x times 0x is 0 x's. 4x times negative 1 is negative 4x. So that's on the inside. So the next thing, that should be 0x squareds. Next thing I noticed is we have negative 2x squareds. And right now in our box we have 0. So this has to be negative 2x squareds. Well, x squared times what gives you negative 2x squareds? Well, that's negative 2. Multiply it out, negative 2 times 0x would be 0x. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. And that's our number, so now we have our remainder. Well, we have negative 2x in there, so now we need 10x. And well, we have negative 4, so this has to be 14x. And let's see, our number-wise, we need to have negative 9 and we have 2, so this has to be negative 11. So once again, we end up with 4x minus 2 and a remainder of 14x minus 11 over x squared minus 1. So we get that exact same thing. Let's see, I think we'll take a look at one more here. So again, looking at example 3 here, long division. X to the fourth, I notice we don't have any 0x cubes, minus 4x squared plus 2x minus 9, divided by x squared plus x plus 1. So x squared times what give us x to the fourth? Well, that would be x squared. Now we multiply it out, so that's x to the fourth, x squared times x cubed, x squared times 1 is x squared. Subtract away, 0 minus x squared is negative x cubed. 4x squared minus x negative 4 would be negative 5x squared. Bring down the 2x and the minus 9. And now x squared times what gives you x cubed? Well, that would just be negative x. So multiply it out, we got negative x cubed, negative x times x, negative x squared, negative x times 1, negative x. And subtract. So negative 5 minus a negative, that's plus, so that'd be negative 4x squared. 2 minus negative x, so that's plus, so plus 3x minus 9. And divide out again. So x squared times what gives you negative 4x? So we have negative 4. Multiply it out, negative 4x squared. Negative 4x times x is negative 4x. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Subtract away 3 minus, that's plus, so x. Negative 9 minus 4, that's plus. So we end up with a remainder of 13. No, sorry, that's negative 5. My bad, because plus 4. So our answer is x squared minus x minus 4 with a remainder of x minus 5 over x squared plus x plus 1. So the box method, outside on our box, x squared, x and 1. We know inside is x to the fourth. So this has to be x squared, x cubed, x squared. Well, now we know there aren't any x cubes, so this has to be negative x cubed because we need 0. So this has to be negative x squared, negative x. Well, let's see, x squareds. We have 0 and we need negative 4, so this has to be negative 4x squareds. So x squared times what gives us negative 4? That's got to be negative 4. Negative 4x, negative 4. And now we're on our remainder. Well, we need a total of positive 2x, and we have negative 5. So this has to be 7x. And we have negative 4 and need negative 9, so this needs to be negative 5. And I have a hunch here. Something went off here. And time's going to run out, so I'll have to double check. There's a mistake somewhere in here, but now you have the general idea